Scientists first began to understand addiction as a brain disorder in the 1950s. Doctors Olds and Milner, in laboratory studies of rats, found the parts of the brain affected by addiction. But then in 1994, Doctors Volkov and Shelbert, top neuroscientists, ran CAT scans of the brain that showed the effects of substance use disorders. Like other diseases, these scans showed it affected tissue function. There are two main parts of the brain affected by drug use: the limbic system and the cortex. The limbic system, located deep within the brain, is responsible for our basic survival instincts. So when you do essential things to stay alive, like eat, drink, find shelter, have sex, or care for your young, your brain reinforces behaviors that cause the release of dopamine from this region. That reward for surviving is also transmitted to the amygdala and hippocampus, which records a memory of that feeling, so we seek it again. This is our survival hardwiring. Addiction also affects this area, up here, in the prefrontal cortex, which is what separates us from other animals. This is where decision-making and impulse control live. When drugs or alcohol are used, they activate the same dopamine process in the survival center. And when use is repeated, that substance can hijack that part of the brain. This hijacker changes the brain and weakens this system to make it believe that the primary need for survival is the drug. In hijacking the brain, it can usurp those primary motivations: food, water, shelter, sex, and protecting our young. And the hijacker needs more and more of the substance to activate the same level of reward or feeling of pleasure, causing the brain tissue to become increasingly damaged with continued drug use. There are factors that put you at higher risk for the hijacker, including individual factors like genes and age of first use, and then environmental factors like drug availability. But if the hijacker takes hold, addiction is treatable. Advancements have been made in assessments, detox, treatment programs, recovery supports, and medications to treat addiction. Brain scans show that once in recovery, the tissue in the limbic system and cortex can get better. With your help, we can expand these innovations to help millions of individuals and families and ensure that addiction is treated as the medical issue that it is. Together, we can solve this. Join us. Not everyone who uses alcohol or drugs will develop a problem, yet others will develop a substance use disorder. Why is that? People have different risk factors for developing a substance use disorder that are entirely unique to them. These risk factors could be from your environment, like poverty or if you're exposed to trauma, or more individual risk factors like your genes or the age of first use. The escalation from first use to developing a substance use disorder follows a pathway. This starts with initiation, to regular use, to problem and risky use, and then to substance use disorder and addiction. But not everyone goes down the full path. Think of it like a whirlpool. You start with initiation, dipping your toe into the larger pool. Your risk factors can act as weights, pulling you deeper into the pool, dragging you under the water. Far more people get into the pool with alcohol and tobacco than with heroin or cocaine. Each substance has different risk levels for developing a substance use disorder, like whirlpools swirling at vastly different speeds. The heroin pool, for example, is a powerful force. Over 70% of heroin users will develop a substance use disorder. They'll be sucked in and pulled down, often quickly. Of all tobacco users, 56% will develop a tobacco use disorder. 9% of those who use alcohol, 11% of those who use marijuana, and 51% of those who use methamphetamines. And when multiple substances are used at the same time, the risks get even higher. Drugs and alcohol use can escalate to a disorder rapidly or slowly based on a person's individual risk factors, as well as the risk of the substances they're using. Understanding these risks are vital to understanding how to avoid a substance use disorder. We envision a world where fewer lives are lost to this treatable disease, and help exists for those who need it. Together, we can solve this. Join us. Episode 3: Understanding the Severity of Addiction. Like other chronic illnesses, addiction tends to get worse over time. Similar to the stages of cancer, doctors can measure the severity of an addiction to help determine the right kind of treatment. A few years ago, doctors released new guidelines for diagnosing substance use disorders, or SUDs. They included 3 levels of severity. Level 1 is a mild substance use disorder. Level 2 is moderate, and Level 3 is high, also known as an addiction. People who use alcohol or drugs in risky ways but aren't yet experiencing a full disorder are considered at risk and placed at Level 0.5. Knowing the severity level of your substance use disorder helps your doctor understand the status of your illness and your risk for serious events, like overdose. It also helps your doctor understand how your disorder is likely to progress if left untreated, and then plan the best course of treatment. Doctors determine the severity of a substance use disorder based on 3 categories of symptoms. The first category of symptoms relate to how much control you have over your substance use, such as using more of a substance or using more often than you mean to, and wanting to cut down or stop using but not being able to. The second category of symptoms relate to how your substance use affects your life, such as neglecting your responsibilities and relationships, or giving up activities you used to care about because of your substance use. And the third category of symptoms relate to your level of physical dependence on the substance, such as needing more of the substance to get the same effect, also known as tolerance, or having withdrawal symptoms when you don't use. As a substance use disorder progresses, your chances of having mental and physical health problems goes up, and overall quality of life goes down. And most importantly, the risk of death increases with severity. Starting treatment as soon as possible is key. The more severe the disorder, the more intense the level of treatment is needed. As you move through treatment, you should step down to less intensive levels of care. If you have a severe substance use disorder, you may start with inpatient services, then graduate down to intensive outpatient care. Whereas if you have a moderate or mild substance use disorder, you may start with outpatient care. Your doctor should monitor your progress and adjust your treatment as needed. If you experience a setback, you may need to go back up a step. It's important to remember that more treatment isn't necessarily better if it's the wrong kind. This is why understanding severity is so important. If you think you or a loved one may have a substance use disorder, don't wait to find help. The sooner you're treated, the better your chances for a full recovery. Reach out for help today.